Hello, everyone. I am April Edwards, and I'm here to talk about developing with Visual Studio 2019, along with my colleague, Giles Davies. My colleague, Giles, and I are sitting in different geographic locations because we want to kind of demonstrate some of the features of LiveShare and some of the other great features that you can do in Visual Studio 2019 that enable collaboration. I just want to go over Visual Studio a little bit first. Give me just a second to get my slide deck up and going. So Visual Studio 2019, it was really devised and improved upon various previous versions by taking collaboration from the field, from other developers and taking feedback, and really the open source community and features and capabilities that they wanted to see in the new product line. So in terms of what we kind of offer to developers, we have different tools. We have Visual Studio for Mac, Visual Studio Code, and full-fledged Visual Studio 2019. It offers various services within that, things like Teleco, which we're going to go over today, LiveShare, connects into Visual Studio App Center, and there's seamless integration with GitHub and Azure DevOps. And of course, it goes into Azure and on-prem environments. But we are here to deliver the best-in-class tools, services for any developer, any app, any platform. So how do we support developers end-to-end? We use the whole kind of DevOps process and lifecycle, and we integrate that into our platform. So when we go to plan and develop what our customers are looking to do and what we're trying to deliver and what kind of value to our organizations, we then can deploy that, test it, and use some of the inbuilt testing tools to help us better provide what kind of platform we're going forward with, which then leads to how we can kind of debug our code and improve upon our code and then go into full-term deployment into the DevOps lifecycle. So Visual Studio 2019 has different editions that we've launched. So we have a community edition, which is free. It is great for individuals or in organizations that might be a bit smaller, where you have less than 5 users, and even great for startups. We have 2 other IDE editions that we see most of kind of our customer base using, and that's Professional and Enterprise. You get a load of extra features and benefits with those. And some dev test pricing as well. So it enables you to kind of leverage the cloud technologies and have more end-to-end enterprise solutions in place. So with those subscriptions that you get with Professional and Enterprise, with those, you get developer tools and services, you get access to Azure, training support, and dev test resources. So for a lot of organizations, they're looking to either test things in the cloud, and they can hook into like a dev test subscription, get lower to free resources they can deploy to, and use things like Visual Studio 2019 to enable that. Now, in terms of the pricing plans, they do vary, but in terms of the dev test pricing, it is all available, and you can use the link below to reference if you'd like to get more information on that. And I think if everyone's pretty well aware that there was an acquisition from Microsoft into GitHub, you can fully leverage your deployments into your GitHub repos from Visual Studio itself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and bring up Visual Studio. So the new landing page is a little bit different than years in the past. It does allow me to see my recent projects and solution files. I can clone or check out code from things like GitHub or Azure DevOps. I can start a new project or solution, open up anything locally, or continue without any code at all. So with those of you that have existing repos in GitHub or Azure DevOps, you can clone those and check out your code immediately. But what I'm going to do today is I'm going to open up a new project. So while this is opening, I have myself and Giles Davies on the other line. So Giles and I are sitting in different geolocations. So what I want to do is create a new project with Giles to get us started on building a new web app. And what we're going to do is we're going to launch this web app into Azure today with you guys on the line. So immediately from creating a new project, they've taken on board some of the feedback we've had in the search capability. So VS 2019 has much greater search capability than potentially we had in the past. So it makes it much easier to find products and the code you want to deploy into. So you can type in the search bar and it'll pull stuff up and lets you reference the type of projects you want to pull in. So for today's project, we're going to launch a .NET Core app. I type in .NET Core, .NET, and I can pull up different variations of .NET. So I want to do a web application. We're going to just call it Web Application 2. I'm going to create it. And once I've created this project, it will let me go in and enable something such as LiveShare. So we want to create a web application. We get other options when we go to build this where we can enable it for Docker desktop if you want to containerize it, configure for HTTPS. You can also add in authentication now. So for the purpose of this, I'm not going to enable any authentication. So it is creating my project. Again, we're doing this from scratch instead of hooking in from an existing project. And give it just a minute to launch. So what I want to do first is invite my colleague Giles to this whole project. So I'm going to click on the, oops, sorry. We're going to click on the LiveShare button up here, and it's going to generate a code. Now, this will enable us to do any kind of pair programming, and how this works is the code will get generated and I can share it with my team. You pretty much need one or more guests to join the team. So I'm going to copy my code. I'm going to go share it with my colleague on the other side. So he's going to receive the code. For those of you online, it looks like this. So Giles is going to click on that link, and he'll be able to see the code that we have for our website.
Cool. Thank you, April. So I'm just to explain what's going on. So April's just sent me the link in IM, so I can see that here. So we are sharing a Teams session for the purposes of recording this. You don't need to be in Teams for this. So one way or another, I've got April has sent me this invitation. Probably worth highlighting as well, when the bar came up in Visual Studio, there was an option to make it a read-only join as well. So I've got an editing join, but you can also have a read-only join. So the experience from my perspective is I then go and click on this, and it's opened on another screen. There we go. Let's bring that over here. And that brings up some information about LiveShare. So I can see, so April's invited me in. What am I going to join with? So interestingly as well, I think, is that I don't have to join with Visual Studio, the IDE. I could also join with Visual Studio Code. So depending on what you've got installed and what you prefer to use, you could choose either of those. So there's some information here about that. In fact, just because I was mucking around with, I've got two screens here, I'll just bring this up. There we go. Now I'm in the same window, so you can see it. So I've then got the choice for what do I want to go and do the LiveShare for. So I've previously installed the LiveShare extension into Visual Studio Code. Where's it gone again? Sorry, keep losing that. Let me put it back last time. So I've previously installed the Visual Studio Code LiveShare extension, so that comes up as one of the options. In this case, I will use Visual Studio, and it's installed in 2019 by default. You can use it in 2017 as well. So I'm going to click on 2019. I don't always want to use that, so let's choose this. And there we go. It's just starting up. So I didn't have, just to keep it obvious, let me just get rid of these windows. I didn't have Visual Studio running. So this is a nice clean environment. And now I can see that if I go, it's just, again, let me bring that in from the other screen. It's just setting itself up. So I'm sitting in a different part of the country to April. I'm just working from home today in the West Midlands. And now I can see the application that April's working on. So if I do something like, let's go into one of these, doesn't really matter actually. So let's just pick something. If I come in here and let's just stick a comment in, then I can say, here's a comment for April. Then we'll switch screens again shortly. But obviously that's something now that April will be able to see. So we're now collaborating on the same solution. This solution doesn't exist for me locally. So April has shared this remotely from her machine, but I'm now in here and editing this, and equally I'll be able to see things that April does. So we're now working together on this. So that's the idea. So what I'll do is if I stop sharing, so let me go back into Teams. Where's he gone? In here, and I'll stop sharing, and then we'll move to April's screen. There we go.
Right, so for my screen, I do apologize, Giles and I are both using different colors, but again, I can change the background of my Visual Studio 2019 experience because I prefer to work in black. He prefers the white background. And if you look at my screen now, you can see Giles making comments. It has his name attached to it. So if you are working in a collaborative session on a pair programming methodology, you can see what the other people are doing. So in our app, Giles is making some changes. He can make, and it's highlighted in yellow if you see on the left-hand side of my screen. Not only do I see his name, but I also see where he's made those changes. So I can go over to where it's been hovered, click on the yellow, and I know actually it's highlighted also where those changes have been. Now, the other thing I want to show out, point out is if you notice the light bulb, there's a couple different light bulbs in the code here. So if I click on this, it's giving us some suggestions on our code. So what it's doing is it's using things called what we call refactoring in Visual Studio 2019. It gives you actions in moving things like your base class or your interface and making suggestions that could help improve your code changes. Now, the way this does this, it uses AI in the background and trying to help you improve your code methodology amongst the team. So if you're trying to look at implementing best practice, or maybe even just looking at old code, maybe a way to rework it. This is a great way to say, actually, we need to refactor our code a little bit. But you'll see it kind of pop up in the code that we have here, nothing too crazy. You see it again. Now, this is a default build, so you'd think there wouldn't be any suggestions, but actually, there are a few. So that's okay. We're just building a little bit of a website, so no big deal. So I'm going to go to the main page of our website now. I'm going to make some changes. So if you notice here, when I go to make these changes, I can still see Giles making changes to the page we're on. But it asked me if I want to save the changes that were made to the program.cs. Now, in Giles' screen, he doesn't see this. So we want to point out that I hold the code on my machine, even though I'm holding the session. Giles is only getting access to the interface. He's not getting access to the code itself. So I can't approve, he can't make these changes and affect code until I approve it. So in this instance, it's saying, yes, do you want to save it or not save it? Yes, I'd like to save the changes that Giles and I made. So what I'm going to do is I actually want to put in some code. We're just going to change our little website here. We're just going to put in a basic landing page that looks a little bit different.
Sorry to interrupt as well, but I'll just highlight that as April is changing files in Visual Studio, I'm also seeing the different files. So I'm basically following what April's doing. I don't need to click on anything. As April is changing that, I'm seeing the files change. And
Giles, do you want to share your screen and I'll make some more changes on my end?
Yeah, sure. Let's do that. So there's my screen. So I'm not. So you have to believe me. Obviously, my hand is off the mouse, etc. So I'm not moving it. So at the moment, I'm seeing the index page. So if you want to bring something else up, April, or whatever you're going to do, and we'll see. There we go. We can see as April is highlighting "Hello World," we can see a name attached to it. And if you could navigate to another file as well, actually, April, and then we'll see that again. Obviously, you just have to believe me. There we go. So now opened up contact in preview. So I'm just watching. So this would be great for, let me walk you through this code. Let's, whether that's some sort of pair programming or code review, or whether it's let me bring you up to speed on this application or solution. Then actually I can just remotely be guided through this and I don't need to be clicking around. I can just listen to April showing and telling me what to do. So back to you, April.
Yep, so I'm just going to make some more changes to our website. I just want to say we're not selling a Redmond. Oh,
yep. I'll stop sharing. Okay.
Cool. And I'll take that over. So I think in reality, you don't need to actually, use Teams. We're using Teams just to show that we are both in different locations and to record this. So it's more just for everyone's benefit that's watching this to see that we can be in two different locations. You can be on, a Teams call or another type of call or instant messenger and having that collaboration, but also just sharing the IDE interface across your team, right? One of the other really good features is in Telecode. So if I go back to our, just go back to one of our pages, doesn't really matter. When I go to start typing, it will give us, it will populate some options. So I'm just typing in a word and it's giving me different options to actually put in. So what it's doing is Telecode uses an AI backend. Again, we're putting AI into more of our tools. It's providing suggestions and coding objects for me to use. So instead of having maybe to remember what best practices or what I want to use, it will give me suggestions. Now, it's using about 2,000 various open source projects in GitHub to kind of stream and improve our coding skills. So for anyone that maybe is a junior developer or maybe someone inexperienced in a team, this is a great way for them to learn maybe best practice as well, and some options in there. We can do things like using our code cleanup, though, on older projects. It will learn our code style, and it can adapt to that. So if you are trying to share a massive project with a team, you can teach it to use your actual code style, learn it, and then share that with your team, and they can adapt that same code style as well. So I think there's a lot of great features that are in the platform here that really help you leverage what kind of the technology can do for you. So I'm just going to stop making some of these changes here. Now I'm on LiveShare, but we can actually publish our app. So I can go back and say, yep, we want to publish this web page. I can go up to my web app itself. Right now it's just saved locally. I can run it in the console, but actually I want to publish to Azure because we want it to go live. So when we go to publish a target here, you can see I can do it as an app service, a Linux app service, or a virtual machine if we want to. I do want to do it as an app service. I'm going to click on advanced here because we will get more options. It gives me, what configuration I want, whether it be debug or release. .NET Core 3.0 is coming. For those of you that are aware of it, it's just been released. It will be coming soon. I'm just going to keep those settings. I'm happy with that. And then when I go into the next screen, it's going to allow me to create the app service environment. So if you see up here on the right, I've authenticated through. And from Visual Studio itself, I can use the service principal to authenticate into my GitHub, my Azure DevOps environment, and my actual Azure portal environment as well. So we can give this a name. We can call it web application with random numbers. It's given us a generic name. I'm going to call it Gray Matter Web App. I choose what subscription I want to deploy this to. So in this case, I have an internal subscription. I have various others here that I have access to, but I've chosen the one. Now, when we do deploy this, we want to deploy it to a specific resource group, which is a grouping of resources. You can either do an existing one or a new one, and I'm just going to call this one resource group, just for a simple naming convention. And we do have to choose the hosting plan. So without having to log into the portal, because we've set up that service principal, I can choose the size of the hosting plan behind that. And then I can also turn on things like application insights. So we get more, when our app's actually running, we can get more monitoring and background information, how the app's performing. But even from here, I can create a storage account as well. So if I need to store data for my app or any files for it, I can create the storage account here. I can also create a SQL database. So I can write to SQL. So all this we're able to do from a pretty seamless experience. And this is going from new. If you want to pull out an existing project, you can also publish this to Azure itself. So it's going to create our actual web app. You can see in the bottom left-hand corner here that it is deploying. So while this deploys, it's a fairly quick environment. For those of you that work in on-premise environments quite a bit, you're aware that sometimes getting things spun up on-prem can be a bit time-consuming, or you're waiting on other dependencies or maybe another team to help you get that infrastructure in place. So I work with a lot of teams that are looking to publish directly to Azure because they can spin up their test environment. So this case, it'd be kind of like that dev test lab environment that I spoke about in the beginning. It's exporting out to Azure itself right now. And actually, if I go into my portal while that's deploying, I should be able to see where it is deploying to. So I'm in my Azure portal. I don't see my new resource group just yet. Let me see if it pops up. No, it is not there yet. So I'll give it a minute while it still deploys. And again, you can launch this locally. You can also run this to console and test as a local web page as well. So I'm in my portal now, and I can see that I go into the resource group that we called resource group, and here's the web app that we just created. So if I click on it here in the Azure portal, we've published our code. So it's created basically all the resources behind our website. It gives us a URL. You can bring in a custom DNS name, so don't worry about that. This is just the one that was given to us in the naming convention. So it is still loading. I believe the web app's still spinning up, but here we have a working website. So there we go. So I hope everyone enjoyed kind of listening to the new features of Visual Studio 2019, and a big thank you to my colleague Giles Davies for looking at the different features with me. But it was great to have everyone on the call today and look at how we can leverage the tools of Visual Studio 2019 and deploy into Azure directly as well. So just want to say thank you all.